Welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm your host, Mildred Ingram, R&R's Editor-in-Chief, and today I'm joined by Bob Moore, President of United Water Restoration Group. Bob, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, Mildred. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So normally I would ask a slew of questions, but today I want to do something a little different. I want to just kind of talk about a specific topic. And that is the importance of having a well-working relationship between franchisee and franchisor. And Bob is absolutely an expert in this topic. So Bob, I'm going to hand it over to you. Could you please just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe just provide a high-level overview of your background and expertise?
Sure. Thank you. So thank you very much. That's very generous calling me an expert. But that probably means that I've made enough mistakes on both sides of the fence as a franchisee and franchisor to learn a few lessons. So, but I appreciate it. My name's Bob Moore, and I have been in franchising for a little over 30 years. I started out with Domino's Pizza. The first 6 years I worked for corporate and various franchise owners. And then the last 7 years, I was a multi-unit franchise owner myself. So I own multiple Domino's stores. Ended up selling the company when Bain Capital bought the company. They were doing a bunch of things. I didn't necessarily like some of the changes in direction, but listen, they bought it. So they earned the right to do that. But so I sold my stores, and then I went to work for ServiceMaster, one of our current competitors right now, but a great company. And there I was the West Coast regional director. I was responsible for 5 states of franchisees. My team and I supported about 134 businesses across 5 states, the bulk of them in the restoration space as well. From there, I went on to work for Dunkin' Brands, the parent company for Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins. And there I saw about a third of the country for all things people and training related. My team and I supported existing franchisees. If you were brand new and started your first Dunkin', my team would help support that opening and training the crew. And we did operations training and some internal training within Dunkin' as well. So a little over 10 years with that company. And then I've been 4.5 years with United Water Restoration Group. So, quite a few years in franchising. So you can tell with all the gray hair and things like that. But I love the business model. I love dealing with entrepreneurial people, and I love seeing the dynamic of the franchise business model as it kind of plays out and comes to life. So that's what's kept me, in the franchise world.
Absolutely. And so from your personal experience, why would you say it is important to have a well-working relationship between the two?
Sure. That's a great question, because it's interesting dynamics. It's almost like a business marriage, right? Because they are independent business owners. You have to respect that. They might not always do the things you would hope they do, or the way that they would, you want them to do them. And that's their prerogative, right? As long as they're not damaging the brand or things like that. And there are times where that experimenting or trying things slightly different really benefits the overall brand, right? So you have to allow for that. It can be challenging at times too. But it is like a business marriage, because they are independent business owners. They bought into your concept, but you have to allow them the freedom and respect their freedom to make certain choices within their business, as long as it's not harming the brand, And then there are times where, we might not agree on a direction or a decision and things like that. The franchisor has to kind of keep in mind the overall brand, and that decision sometimes might run contrary to an individual franchisee's desires or goals, or somehow might not mesh with what they're hoping to do. So you try and navigate these waters as best you can with respect all around, and just keep those lines of communications open.
Are there certain steps that are taken if whenever the disagreement happens? Is it just like a meeting that you have potentially just to kind of like level the playing field?
Sure. I think most of it just is resolved through open and honest communication, right? And if there's trust between the franchisor and the franchisee, we might disagree. That's okay. We're all grown-ups and things like that. But I think if there's trust between the franchisee and the franchisor and the franchisor and the franchisee, you can work through things, in communication. in every franchise agreement, there are formal steps where you can, go through the dispute resolution and have a mediator and things like that. What I found in, my 30 years, most problems are resolved well before that. There are times you might have to get more senior leaders involved in the company, or, even in a large franchisee, sometimes the franchisee might not be active in that business as much, and they may need to lean in. But most issues, it seems to be resolved before, they get to the formal resolution process. So.
Which makes sense. And so I'm just curious, what would you say, given your extensive background, is your biggest career-related lesson that you've learned up to this point?
That's a great question. So one thing, and I say it to our franchisees all the time, and every brand that I've been a part of, the most successful franchisees are engaged franchisees, meaning they're engaged with the corporate teams and the support mechanisms that are in place. They're engaged with fellow franchisees, and they're also engaged in the industry outside of that particular, the franchise entity. I'll give you an example in restoration. Mm-hmm. You have some great groups out there. RIA, is a good example of Restoration Industry Association. There's all kinds of other training and things like that our franchisees can attend outside of, what we provide. And I think it's important to be engaged there. But, specifically speaking to franchise, and every brand I've been a part of, the most successful franchisees they're engaged, with that franchise team and other franchisees. And that yields the best results, seem to.
Okay. And so before we go, I would like to know, is there any advice you would like to share with the audience on this topic?
I would just say, from all my years of experience and things that it can be hard, right? But when you're engaged, it gets easier because you don't have to have all the answers yourself. That's probably one of the biggest things. When I experienced it personally. When I was a franchisee, there were times where I was struggling with certain things, and I felt like the weight was all on me, and I didn't even, take my own advice of being engaged. But the moment I did and reached out to either corporate support or fellow franchisees for help, that load lightened, right? And I was able to learn some things or try some things. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to have all the answers, right? Right. As a franchisee. And I would just say for anybody in any brand out there, when you feel that way, get engaged, reach out to your franchise support people, reach out to fellow franchisees, because that's what you bought into. You've paid money to be part of a system. You pay royalties to, support that system. So be engaged to the resources you have available to you, because that will help you, and most problems you can work your way out of. So.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, thank you so much for your time and insight. And again, before we go, where can our listeners connect with you or learn more about United Water Restoration Group?
Sure. The best place, you can go to our either of our websites, UnitedWaterRestorationGroup.com or UWRGFranchise.com if you're interested in franchise opportunities. So.
Awesome. And thank you. And for more insight on restoration remediation and people behind it all, visit our website, rnrmagazineonline.com. We are Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't, be sure to follow the podcast to keep with our latest episodes and give us a quick review and rating. This has been R&R's Ask the Expert. Thank you guys for listening.